Welcome to Cut Daisies and Unicorns, and it's a hot day in Chicago. It's a little bit warm, a little bit muggy. I mean, it rained last night, I believe, right? Yesterday. So it's even though the sun's shining today, I think it adds to the level of mugginess.
For those of you,
that?
and muggy is a good M word.
Yeah.
I was thinking for those of our listeners who are opposed to the word moist, that we definitely have a moist day out there.
Speaking of moist, what do you think it is about the word that people? I mean, connotations. What is the pushback on the word moist?
I'm actually gonna go to the I don't know emoji.
I mean, because when you're thinking about cake, wouldn't you rather your cake be moist?
I actually prefer moist cake.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
So
I think it's the O-I vowel connection,
mm-hmm.
and in it, it's the oi. The oi part.
Diphthong. The oi of the diphthong. How you like diphthong? That's quite the word.
Not
right
even
there.
talking.
Yeah.
I'm not going to
oi.
No.
Ow. Mm-hmm.
Oi.
Those are all diphthongs.
Oh man.
Yeah, I only learned. I mean, I'm sure the diphthong is something that's been in the English language as far as like people who are into the English language. But I actually didn't understand that word until I was learning Greek.
A diphthong?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So, yeah. There you go.
So you didn't have remedial English for 5 years in a row?
No.
Yeah.
Maybe we spent some time talking about that, but I have no idea.
See, that's the thing. In advanced classes,
yeah,
when you don't have to do that,
right?
Because we've already talked about my 5 years in remedial English, right?
No.
What?
I don't think so.
Oh. Cue music.
Right? Dun, dun, dun.
And then, yeah, so I'm sure okay, I'm going to tell the story. Here's the story. When I was in 7th grade, we started out with an English teacher.
Yeah.
She died of cancer. And our class was hard on teachers.
Ouch. Like real hard, apparently.
Yeah, because we went through 6 different teachers. Like they brought in for a short term, as she had cancer, they brought in substitutes.
Yeah.
Well, then they knew that they had to do like something more permanent. Well, after 2 days of our class being in English with one of the people who was supposed to be there,
yeah,
like she walked out crying and didn't come back.
Wow.
Oh yeah. So we go through 6 teachers. The last teacher to teach us,
yeah,
was a Canadian French band teacher, Mr. Mestak. And I'm telling you, he spoke with a Canadian French accent as he spoke English, and he was teaching us English in 7th grade. So then in 8th grade, this is where the roots of my entrepreneurialism came out.
Yeah.
Like I would take my lunch money, walk to the corner gas station, and buy big bubble gum.
Yeah.
And walk back and sell it to my classmates for twice the price.
Capitalism and entrepreneurialism.
Shipping and handling, It was me handling the gum and my feet doing the shipping.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so then what I figured out was we had this shake machine, like milkshake.
Yeah. At your school?
In junior high.
Wow.
Yeah, it was cool, dude. So not only did we go through the line and we got our grilled cheese and French fries and all this other stuff, but then and for 50 cents you could get, and it was, just kind of, but the longer the machine ran, the thicker it got. So the key was don't show up first in line because it was runny, but then it was almost like soft serve ice cream by the time it was time for class.
Yeah.
But then the line was so long that if the bell rang and you were in line, they shut it down.
Ooh.
Well, what me and my buddy Todd figured out was we could stay and help clean out that machine. We could lick the paddles, spoons, all of that stuff, and then we're like, we became the lunch lady cook favorite people because we'd bring all the trays in and all this other stuff. What I forgot to mention to my mom
Yeah.
was when the bell rang, the class I was supposed to go to was 8th grade English. So at parent-teacher conferences, my mom came home and she did not look happy. Now, I had not figured out, I mean, there was some parts of Peacemaker, Bridge Builder that I was at, in 8th grade still. But I'm telling you, dude, she was so mad. She's like, you have 23 tardies. And like you're walking into class and, I mean, like, I think we did talk about it last time. I'm like, both in high school and in college, I finished middle, just exactly 50 percentile, of grades. Not well, and actually, it actually worked out that in the class, 109 students, and I think whatever half of that is, Adam, we're not math guys. whatever half of 109 would be, so 54. I was 54 55 in the class, whatever. So I didn't do homework if I didn't have to. I just knew where my grades were as long as I could, and I mean, both my parents were like, if you would actually apply yourself.
That talk.
I'm like, yeah, but if I would apply myself, this would not be as fun as it is. And so pleasure, and fun, I mean, 12, 13 years old, 8th grade, I'm hitting half of the, well, what I didn't realize is Big Brother was profiling all of us. Basically, we all got letters that went home, and that whole grouping of my class, because there wasn't 109 people in that English class, there was only about 30. They split us up 3 ways, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We all got assigned to Mrs. Hilger's class. And we went through it the first year. And then we took her class the second year. And then we took her class the third year.
Nice.
And basically we were told, hey, remember that teacher that died in 7th grade? You guys didn't pick up all of the fundamentals, so you're going to do this until you get the fundamentals down.
Wow.
I literally had diagramming sentences for at least 4 years. I remember part of 8th grade English. So I suppose it could be argued 3.5 years because of my attendance record.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
That's a lot of English too.
It is a lot of English. But when I took Greek, and then and went through, I mean, English in college was a breeze because I probably could have tested out of it, because I had the fundamentals down very well.
Right.
Yeah. So then, by our senior year, we were told that we didn't have to take that class. So I took an American Lit class. And dude, it was so good. I'm like, this is pleasant.
Right.
This is
so much better than English.
Well, but man, yeah. So I was grateful for American Lit, and there were many other forms of English, further on developed advanced classes.
Sure.
That all the other parts, the 70 some other people got to experience for 4 years of high school.
Yeah.
Not this guy. Diphthong.
Yeah, I was in high school. When I originally went in as a freshman, they had me take some test.
Yeah.
Well, I I have a little bit of apparently test anxiety or some form of something, so I don't test well.
It's common within the human race.
It is.
Yeah.
But then I was like, when they started me in the class, like, because I didn't do well, and they're like, I'm like, this is dumb. Like, I already know this. Like, why are you?
Yeah.
And there, I talked to the teacher. I'm like, yeah, like, this is basic. And she's like, well, that's why you're here. I'm like, okay, but like, this isn't, I mean, like, this isn't challenging at all. So they actually put me in the advanced class. She's like, well, we'll put you up there and we'll see how that goes. Did fine.
Yeah.
So testing is an issue.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
But, yeah. So that's it.
There's a little bit about the English language, folks.
Right.
And if you love English, we'd love to hear about it.
Yeah.
Heather
does.
Tell us, Heather. Tell us why you love English and why like. I mean, there's some people that when it comes to languages, apparently, like after the third language, then it gets a lot easier learning other languages.
Sure.
And this takes us down a different. You know this about I've been talking about learning Spanish for 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah.
Well, I got a mailer, and if you wonder if advertising works, the answer is yes. So I got a mailer at the house, and there's community classes up where I live.
Yeah.
And one of the things, they have a very extensive Spanish track. So one of the classes is Spanish for tourists. I thought, you know what? I'm a tourist in life.
Right.
Maybe that's a good place for me to start. Just
so
a guy.
That's like hurry up and be able to talk at least on a level of like.
Yeah.
Donde el baño?
Yeah. Exactly. You know, where's the bathroom? See? Now that's the really scary thing about me. If I listen to people speaking in Spanish to each other,
right,
I can pick it up.
I pick up some.
Just general,
right.
You know. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then as I've had this conversation with the Gather Coles, they because Nicole has taught like English for people who are refugees and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If I understand that correctly, Nicole.
ELL.
Yeah.
English language learners.
I think, or yeah. I'm not exactly sure. But I believe that that's the case. Like after she moved from being an art teacher, she got into helping people who were transitioning for their language in school.
Yeah.
And she was saying that one of the major things that they teach is watching TV shows and movies with the
subtitles.
Yeah, closed caption.
Mm-hmm.
And so that took me back to Sweden when we were going for coffee and donuts, and we walked up to this grocery store we thought might be open and wasn't, but the lady came out and she spoke to us, and I thought for sure she was a Midwesterner. Like her English was so amazing, and I just had to ask. I'm like, are you from the Midwest? And she goes, oh, no. And I said, well, where did you learn to speak English with that accent, which is without a Swedish accent, right?
Right.
And she's like, Grey's Anatomy.
That's funny.
And that's what she did. She, and so, like, yeah. And so Nicole told me, she's like, pick out a show, Spanish show, or a show that's spoken in Spanish. She goes, and then watch that same one for a week, that one episode.
Yeah.
And then you'll see the words and you'll hear it, and then this with the story and everything like that.
Yeah, I think my Spanish teacher in high school was trying to do something similar. We would watch some Spanish-speaking films, El Norte. I think we watched the I forgot that other one. Yeah, but I think he was trying to do that, but we wouldn't repeat it. So we would just be watching it with the subtitles or closed captioning, whatever you want to say.
Right.
And you were supposed to learn through that both culture and language, I think was also the goal, but
yeah,
interesting. Which
Well,
I guess is conversational is what you should be shooting for, right? I mean, you want to be
yeah.
able to have some kind of conversation, even if you don't know all of the verbiage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, language. Wow.
Language.
I'm.
Languages.
But it's work.
Mhm.
I mean, we've kind of covered that too. I mean, like,
Right.
so I looked at the flyer today, and I'm like, should I register for that? And I'm like, well, kids are back to school next week. I mean, yeah, I'll probably pass on it again this semester. Hard pass.
Maybe later.
Yeah.
Maybe later.
Yeah.
There's
So
always time for later.
oh my gosh. And I'm like one of the laters, like when you practice your present, and you're supposed to be in the moment and stuff. One of my things, I'm like a futurist right now. I'm like, I can't wait for the hot spell to like kick it in the tail, start cooling down.
Mm-hmm.
We're not far away though.
Mm-hmm.
We're really not far away.
Yeah,
but when it's 96 in Chicago, like Monday,
right? It was hot.
Oh my gosh,
it was miserable.
Yeah.
How was your studio?
Well, I have 2 air conditioners,
right?
And so
that did a good job, though.
What I have decided to do is that if I know that I'm going to be in the studio back to back to back, then I just leave them run, and then it cools it down.
So,
and so like by the time it's morning, it's down to about 72.
Okay.
I think I got the wrong kind of air conditioners. They're the right kind of air conditioners. I just think I looked at the ratings, I looked at all the stuff, it just is not blowing frigid cold air. But then it's a pretty big space too. And so that's why I ended up getting 2.
It's true.
And it's on the 3rd floor. So everybody else's hot air is rising up.
The heat rises.
Yeah. So I jerry-rigged one of my big fans in the window. And so I cycle air from the basement coming up the stairwell to go out the window. So kind of like an attic fan.
Yeah.
At least it moves air. Moving air, oh man. So then I was watching YouTube, and one of the potters had mentioned on YouTube that they run a dehumidifier.
Yeah.
And then the water that the dehumidifier collects, they use for their pottery. And so I had a dehumidifier in the closet, and then the cool thing with that is auto shut off.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not running all the time. But like, I mean, I've been in the studio all week, so I've been running air, and I've been firing.
Right. So it gets hot in there too.
2,100 degrees inside that kiln, but I do have a vent for that, and actually it doesn't push the heat. It affects the interior temperature a lot less than the sun once it breaks over and it starts coming in through the windows. But I've got sun blocking curtains in the windows now, and like, so there's an environmental things have been figured out and worked out.
Good.
But on Monday, it was 80. I have an internal
temp. Thermometer.
Yes. I have an outdoor thermometer indoors, and it was like 84 or 86 degrees.
Oh man.
Well, but it was 10 degrees cooler than outside. I mean, like but you would hope. I mean, it would be more comfortable if it was 72 or 74.
Right.
It would have been 10 degrees cooler if it was 76. I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, we're talking hot.
Right.
Hot, caliente. See,
there's another.
Spanish.
Right. Little bit. Poquito.
Poquito.
Yeah. So you would be. So Heather took your suggestion. She was asking about the Enneagram.
Oh yeah.
And she started watching Father Richard Rohr's whole segment. So on our trips, she started session 1. I think going out to DC.
Yeah.
And then when we were down in Tennessee,
she
listened to it partly on the way there, and then we listened to like session 2, I don't know, somewhere in there on the way back in. So, yeah.
Yeah. Fascinating, isn't it?
It's fascinating.
Yeah. And I think there is something about, and I should take my own advice on this, there is something about Richard Rohr teaching.
Yeah.
He is a very, very good teacher.
Yeah.
Like, there's something in me that connects when he opens his mouth and he starts talking. And I haven't had a session with him where I haven't learned something, and it's just, and he's able to take things, and there's just this little twist that you weren't thinking about, and it's like, boom.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, really good. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, I mean, even the whole first session, it's just him, and he's saying, he's like, I don't keep no. He's like, all of this is kind of just, it's him talking about the things he already knows.
Yeah.
And so I think, man, like, he can stand up there and talk about it, you know, and I mean, it doesn't,
For a long time.
right, and it doesn't, it's not like, yeah, he kind of, you know, went off track there. I mean, he's staying on track. He knows where he's going.
Yeah.
He knows the destination, knows where he's going to go next.
Yep.
I mean, it's
Yep.
very impressive.
Yeah, I again, even if you're a teacher or someone who does speak up front,
Yeah.
he just even watching his presentations and how he handles working through stuff is just like you would learn something about being a public speaker from him on how he dials stuff in.
Yeah, for sure.
And I hate to say this, but his homilies that are published on the website, dude says more in 12 minutes than, and you are just so blown away in that 12 minutes. It takes you the rest of the day to unpack what he just laid down in 12 minutes. I know several people too get his, when I've mentioned him, they go onto the website and they subscribe to his daily devotional and get that in their email. And so, yeah, I can highly recommend that.
Yeah, and that one comes across on Twitter. So every time, I mean, he tweets out, or somebody
tweets,
tweets out.
Because he is a man of solitude.
Yeah, his daily reflection. So
yeah, it's good, so good. Yeah. There isn't anything bad I could say about the guy, other than that I know as much as I'm in love with him for the knowledge, the wisdom, and the teaching.
Yeah,
I know that there's people that hate his guts.
Really?
Oh, there has to be.
Oh, just because they like the theological juggernaut.
Yeah. They would be like, I'm going to be anti-Richard Rohr. Why? Well,
because people like him.
He's a Catholic priest, I run into the number one thing that people then ask, because I say Father Richard Rohr, and they're like, oh, he's Catholic? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, yeah, I have a hard time getting behind that because of all of the, the stuff.
Yeah.
The molestation.
He doesn't get behind that, though, either.
No, exactly. And I think, people look at the big and the whole organization, and then I say, oh, wait. Google
Franciscans. Yeah, the Franciscan order.
The Franciscan order. And then your mind's going to be blown, because here, even though they are recognized by the Catholic Church, that order is a fringe order, not in the way we use the term fringe.
Right.
But they were actually, and it's probably one of the reasons why I'm endeared to them, because they're mediators. They're bridge builders between the corporation of the Catholicism and real people.
Yeah.
And I was Googling patron saints, and I Googled what St. Francis was, and he's the patron saint of ecology and animalology.
Makes sense.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I mean, if you know anything about, Francis, then
yeah. And for people who are like, well, I've heard of St. Francis.
Right. Because then you get Pope Francis, who took his name after Francis. So
Yep. Yeah. And there was something on that Google search that was really quick. Uh, the thing that what's it called when people bleed? The wounds of Christ.
Oh, stigmata.
So apparently he was one of the first people to have
to experience the stigmata. Or,
yeah.
I didn't know that.
I didn't either until 72 hours ago.
Wow.
Yeah. Or if I add another 24 hours to that,
Right.
96. But yeah, St. Francis. Check him out. Check it out. But that's why I talk to birds.
So they are real then, birds.
Oh, I mean, I don't know. They haven't talked back to me. So
yeah.
But they are reoccurring. So I'll probably have, if the birds aren't real, I have close encounters with the digital kind.
With the government drone.
Yeah. No wonder the same Robin kept coming back to talk to me.
Yeah. So one of these days we're going to have to, we talked about early on trying to do an Enneagram show where we're going to talk a little bit further on Enneagram. We don't have to do that now because we're already into it, but just thinking about that, we'll try to maybe put out some of the links on Father Richard Rohr that he's teaching, and then say, hey, we're gonna tackle some of it on a later date. But
yeah, and I had asked some friends of my mom's if we could interview them about that, and they had agreed to it, but we've all been so busy
right.
that hasn't been a practice or a part of what's going on.
Yeah, so maybe we can get them back somewhere on the calendar.
And I would say, hey, maybe the Enneagram isn't as big of a deal as it was 2 years ago. The really crazy part that most people don't understand is that the Enneagram has been passed through spiritual directors in the Catholic Church, for like multiple decades. I think since like mid-60s or so. And man, so when you start looking, 40, 60 years of, existence, if you've never heard of it, this would be a great time. You can go to YouTube and just type in Enneagram, and there's gobs and gobs of stuff there.
Yeah, there's those, and this is where when I had started, like there's some of those short quizzes online that you can, but once you actually go back and listen to me, especially Richard Rohr, like it's not a good idea to just kind of pigeonhole yourself, or thinking like, hey, I'm going to hurry up and do this and see what number I am so I can be a part of a conversation.
Yeah.
But instead, because I did that early on, I'm like, all right, what number does this say? Well, it was saying I was a 1, which actually is what Richard Rohr is, but
yeah,
right,
yeah.
But I don't know. So I'm still, after listening to him, I don't know if I'm exactly 1 doesn't fit me completely. So I'm still listening, but
yeah.
I don't know. Heather kept saying, "Oh, I think you're a 3. I think you're a 3. I think you're a 3." Like, I'm like, I don't think you're supposed to tell me what I am either.
Yeah.
So,
my favorite Richard Rohr quote of that series is when he gets to the number 9 and he says, "Hey, if you've been listening to me this whole time and you're still wondering what number you are," he goes, "We're going to cover 9s now." And he said, "And there will be some of you that even after we cover that, then you'll be like, I still don't know what number I am." He goes, "I guarantee any person who's walked up to me after class and said, 'Hey, can you help me out? I'm really struggling to figure out which number my number is.'" He goes, 100% of the time, they're 9s. And I was right, like I'm hook, line, and sinker. I'm like, what in the world? And so anyway, long story short, I have an affinity for 1s, apparently. The other wing for a 9 is an 8. And the thing that I keep telling people is it's not about being able to label what other people are.
Right.
It's not a profiling exercise.
Mm-hmm.
You don't figure out your numbers so that you can profile everyone else around you.
Right.
The beauty of the Enneagram is that each number represents a face of God.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of humanity is found within those 9 numbers. And actually, if you know more about the Enneagram, 27 combinations, and then then you've got wings, and then you've got when you're strong, and then and the other thing is that you have to remember that the number that you are is actually the armor that you picked up as a child for your own survival.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not necessarily like being a 9, and in a 9 you can be an unhealthy 9, you can be a healthy 9, you can, you can be a healthy 1, an unhealthy 1, and then based on what's across or linked by the lines is then as you move into healthiness, you're actually not living at the core of what that number is, but you're moving across and you're taking on. And so we get to see a multifaceted approach to God, the face of God. Right. And the other thing is, and it's probably what ruined me in regards to, if I'm something, I'm probably anti-denominationalist. Because of a pursuit of a greater universal appreciation to take in. And I'm not saying universalism.
Right. Hear that, fundies.
Everybody stop and listen to the words that I'm using. Words do matter. I'm not saying I'm a universalist or that I'm for universalism. But what little marble that's floating around the sun, can we at least get big enough to see how small we are? There's a Coble quote for you right there. Let's get big enough to see how small we are.
Right. And
let's start allowing this unseen deity becoming so much bigger than our minds could. I mean, if it's trapped in our mind, it's such a small God.
Right.
Little g, little g, little g. So anyway, I'm that's kind of a rant on spiritualism as far as, from my perspective. I pretty much, and actually, I'm lucky to have a friend like you.
You got a friend in me.
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, because I was thinking about what would ever happen if I went back to work like in a church structure.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm an acquired taste anyway. And then with where I'm at right now, I think I've been removed out of corporate organized church for the sake of God's like, it's just safer for you out here.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's safer.
It's safer for the church, and it's safer for you.
Just safer for everybody. Safe space.
Oh man.
Yeah, because I've seen some of these fundamentalist evangelicals that just hate the Enneagram. I'm like, I don't understand what. They're so fundy towards this whole idea of anything that's gonna help. I mean, good. Yeah.
Well, so what I'm struggling for the words for is closed-mindedness.
Mm-hmm.
So I mentioned this to Amy on NPR. I was hearing a thing. Just a cultural. Chicago currently. Oh, I threw my mask over there. Chicago, Cook County moved to masks inside.
So it's all the county. I didn't know.
Now, that just happened on Tuesday.
Okay.
So we're masked up.
Yep.
I do like to be ahead of the curve. I mean, probably about 3 weeks ago, I was masking up as the Delta variant was
raging on,
moving. But what I heard is now in music communities, artists are getting really big on, hey, if you don't have your shots,
mm-hmm.
you're not coming to the concert. And people are just Hammer and American
Yeah.
Aquarium and Jason Isbell and I mean just all and those are the people on Instagram that I follow and see this war being waged, right?
Yeah.
And so anyway, a reporter was reporting out and saying that people like even going into restaurants and bars right now that they're starting to demand the card. Now, in my mind, I'm going back to the fundamentalists, right?
Yeah.
All right. In my mind, the flag went up. This is the mark of the beast.
Uh-oh.
The next sentence that the reporter said is that not only can you take a picture, you can put it in your wallet, your phone wallet or wherever you keep, like whether it's your credit card stuff or pictures or your flight information, all that. He's like, but you can actually have it converted to a QR code. So then when you pull that up, they don't have to read through. All they have to do is scan the QR code, and then it comes up on their device. Some people are taking the QR code and having it tattooed on their arms.
Oh, wow.
For ease of access to be able to get into shows or get into bars or, to navigate the social.
Right. Huh.
So then I'm like, Kirk Cameron, I need to get on YouTube and hear what Kirk Cameron is saying about COVID shots, QR codes, and the mark of the beast. And I was telling Amy this, and I confused her.
Uh-oh.
Well, we're not now we get into eschatology.
Mm-hmm.
And then because of my cross-referenced experience in and through the denominationalism that I have lived in these very short few years of my life,
right?
I'm like, yeah, we'll have to sit down and talk to Pastor Phil about where Lutherans land on eschatology. And so, I mean,
amillennial. That's what we are.
Amillennial. What are you about?
Or amillennial.
Amillennial.
However you want to say it.
Mm.
That's what Lutherans are.
Lutherans, yeah, amillennial.
Yeah. So it just means when Jesus comes back, Jesus is coming back, and we're done. Like.
So, what about tribulation? Pre-trib, mid-trib, post-trib? No trib.
No trib.
No trib.
I mean, like we're living in trib.
You know what? I think if people, you know how when, like, it was about, the riots,
mm-hmm.
and then I mean, again, we just went through a scare for the hurricane, coming up the coast,
right?
Wildfires in California,
mm-hmm.
I mean,
earthquakes in Haiti.
Like when you start looking at that, I'm like, why doesn't the earth get a personality? I think she's mad at us.
Oh, I would say she is. She is definitely groaning with some anger.
Yes. And so for people who are like, what the hell are you two talking about? And I mean, I'm pretty sure the hippies in the 70s were talking about Mother Earth. Mm-hmm. Does anybody remember the commercial on TV with the Indian with the tear? And it was basically on how the earth was being treated.
Right.
And people are like, well, climate change isn't a real thing. And I'm like, hey, you know what? You may be the same person who's talking to me and saying, how come bad things happen to good people? And, so then I just come back to your point. We're living in tribulation.
Oh, yeah.
I'm telling you, there's a bunch of people in a different denomination who believe we haven't even started it yet.
Right. Yeah, I mean, then you look at that whole system says, so even when Jesus comes back again, then he's going to establish a rule and reign here, and then there's going to be another 1,000 years, and then there's, on top of that, just so confusing. Jesus, if we're dealing with Jesus the Christ,
Right.
and like when he comes, like we'll just put it at that. So Jesus comes back. Okay, cool. We see him. Cool. That's the Christ. It's the Messiah, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. I don't want to get any we can go down a whole
Oh, yeah, we can.
trail of eschatology, but no,
Yeah. So, and that's where I just when I know that there are people who are anti-vax.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who are anti-vax for lots of different reasons. It could be their own health. It could be, dot 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 dot. But then when I heard about, and I knew as soon as shots were being given and that they were giving you a card with your shot, I knew as soon as that was happening, because with the need to record, hey, you got your first shot here, now you get to get the second shot here, and bring your card with you, and actually when I went to get my second shot, the guy was like, "Whoa, you have your card." I'm like, "Yeah, why wouldn't I?"
You told me to bring it back.
He goes, "Literally, of all the people that I've given shots to, like 9 times out of 10, I have to give them a second card." I'm like, that seems horrible.
Yeah.
Because now you have to carry 2 cards, or you got to write it down and you got to forge your initials.
Mm-hmm.
His name's George. I got to forge George. And and so and I'm like, well, I put it in my passport. He's like, that is brilliant. I'm like, I only have to have one good idea a day, man. And
just one.
Only one. Just one.
Yeah.
That's
a lot of pressure per day, though.
Nah, I figure, man, sometimes I'm an overachiever. Sometimes I've got 3 or 4 good ideas. But all I need is one. When the light bulb goes off in somebody else's life because of something I said or I figured out, I'm like, dude, all I need is one per day. 365, you do that for a whole year. Just think, the world's a better place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, but I'm like, this is not hard to figure out.
Right.
I'm like, there's going to come a time when they're not going to let you on an airplane without your card. So I might just well put it with my passport because that's what I take with me.
Yeah. Flying United is now requiring all of its employees to be vaccinated.
Wow.
So you either work for them and get vaccinated, or you don't work for them anymore.
Yeah. Well, United, I mean, since we were calling people out in the last podcast that Adam so brilliantly answered, and for those of you who are listening, if you want
Right.
to, is it on the YouTube channel?
Yeah.
Yeah. Adam took
channel.
some time and responded. And you know what I love? I love that people are actually starting to interact with us that way. Mm-hmm. Nick Prenger was reaching out.
He did.
But and giving a response back. So anyway, but since we were calling people out, and Adam just joyfully responded to us and set all the records straight. And I like to think of Adam as my favorite bootlegger now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you'll have to read the response to be able to understand what I'm talking about. But
yeah, so it's on the last episode, the Hinterland review, and go to that one. You'll find underneath the YouTube video.
Me personally, one of the funniest episodes we've recorded. We were under the gun with our time, and I just kind of got outside myself, and it was hilarious.
Traveled the path.
Oh my word! Yeah. So, I'm like, it's not a stretch,
right?
I was just thinking, this is going to be demanded. But if we're going to call somebody out, we need to call the airlines out. Mm-hmm. I'm like, hey, airlines, yo, you're not doing something new. You've been doing this since the Wright brothers.
Right.
I mean, I'd say it isn't rocket science.
Right.
This is not rocket science. Whoa, but maybe it is. Yeah. So have you been on a flight that hasn't been derailed, delayed? Have you been on a flight that's been on time? recently?
Let me see.
I'm like 0 for 4 right now, and that's round trip
Looking
times
back.
times 2.
Because even the ones that we got caught up, I still think that by the time we got to the gate, there was still a bit of a delay. So, um, there's been a couple that have been real close. Like, I mean, as far as, but I mean, there haven't been a lot of complications.
Yeah.
Um, I kind of, when I started flying again, I kind of stuck with United. United's done a pretty decent job, except, there were a couple of times it was kind of like, we're on time, everybody, we're on time. Let's even get you on the plane. And then, yes, sit there. Like, no, let me sit back in there in the terminal then.
Right.
Like,
Instead of next to the COVID-infested sweaty body who's next to you.
right.
I mean, that's presumptuous,
Uh-huh.
folks. You do understand.
Right.
I'm like, yeah.
But, yeah, the other industry, since we're going to call out other industries,
Yeah.
the car rentals. Man, that is such a pain in the ass right now.
Oh, man.
Such a pain in the ass.
Did I tell you about driving a Chevy Spec?
Yes. I don't remember if you brought it up on the podcast, but
Oh, man. When we went to Seattle, yeah, I didn't bring it up because it was one of those things where, the Airbnb worked out great. I mean, it was inspirational.
Right.
If I'm going to design a tiny home, I've got some really good ideas, and that might be a thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, look for a little acreage and
be cool.
drop a tiny home and reduce my carbon footprint. Every time I log into Google, carbon neutral since 2007. They're leading the pack.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, this little Chevy Spec. And, I mean, it's all over the place. Now, for those who know that I'm having a truck built right now, I heard from my truck builder last night. It's he got the steering column in.
Yeah.
So now he's able to attach the body to the frame and like actually be working on the truck. But he's been waiting because the steering wheel or the steering column is made to collapse if you're in an accident so that it doesn't impale you.
Oh.
And you got to get those angles right based on that. And so he wasn't wanting to go forward. But his and if you want to check out the truck build, you could go to Matt Handley on YouTube. It is called, hold on just a minute. It's usually in my lookups. River City. River City. You can be one of the almost 10,000 subscribers of River City. And Matt does a great job. And update progress on the 62 F100, and you can see the build and what's going on with the truck and everything like that. And then if you want to follow Matt and his son Landon are doing Random Iowa, and he lets Landon poke a pin anywhere around the state of Iowa, and they do the research, the history on the town, and they go and they interview people. And so Random Iowa is one of his, apparently I'm subscribed to. I don't think that they're in alphabetical order on my, So anyway, but what he was saying is, he can get all kinds of parts from China because the issue is the American-built parts and stuff like that. He's having a terrible time, with stuff. And so, anyway.
Well, I just had Cut Daisies subscribe to the River City.
Oh, nice.
YouTube channel.
Yeah,
so,
there you
Matt,
go.
if you're listening at night before you're going to bed, you'll already have seen that that Cut Daisies decided to subscribe to your channel.
Yeah. No, that dude's doing a great job. Great job. And
so yours is the F100?
It's a 62 F100 unibody.
There it is right there.
Yeah, so mine is kind of a beige white.
Yeah.
And his is the one that's down lower that's the baby bird blue, but then he ended up painting it. And in the most recent one, you can see that blue truck behind the pickup frame.
Yeah.
Yeah, he went through and he stripped that thing down to bare metal.
Wow.
And rebuilt the whole thing after he'd already built the truck once.
It's impressive.
Yeah, he's an impressive dude. And yeah, they're getting ready to welcome a little baby girl in February. The due date, he was telling me, 2 is his favorite number, and the baby girl is due on February 22nd, 2022.
Wow.
And Landon came on his due date, and so they're pretty stoked as a family, and so yeah, that's just awesome.
That is
awesome.
A lot of 2s.
I know, right? There's going to be a lot of weddings on that day. People do that.
Yeah. So they find the date that they won't ever forget.
Right. Exactly.
2/22.
Adam and Michaela, 5/15, May 15th, 2021.
It's easy to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mine, we should have just gotten married a day later.
Why?
Because then it would have been 7/11. We got married on 7/10. So July 10th, I'm like, I don't know, we should have just, I think it was then a Saturday we got married, so we should have just gotten married on a Sunday and gone with 7/11, but we didn't.
Yeah. 7/31 for me.
There we go.
26 plus 5 is 31. So that helps me remember birthdays. And yeah, July's a good month.
Yeah. So, should we talk about something that's beautiful? We were talking about it the last podcast. Before we had to take a spontaneous week break, but
yeah. So I was like thinking through and was just pondering about what we were gonna talk about a couple weeks ago, and I was thinking about all those soap operas back in the day.
Yeah.
And gosh, I mean, we have so much technology available. You can binge a whole soap opera. I mean, like, there's a bunch of TV shows that are soap opera-ish, but not like,
not the actual genre when you're talking about soap opera. Because I agree. Because I remember in college, we would watch, like, I think at that time it was still WWF instead of WWE.
Okay.
And Heather would sit around for a while, and she's just like, well, this is dumb, but this is pretty much just like a soap opera, except there's wrestling in between. There was still all the dialogue, it was still drama, it was still all of these, suspense, and she's like, it's basically another soap opera, but for, like, grown kids. So I would agree with you that there could be a lot of things that would still be categorized as a soap opera out there. So what were ones that you remember?
Well, like, as sands through the hourglass, so are the days of our lives.
Right.
Yeah, I remember Days of Our Lives, and then wasn't there a hospital? Is it General Hospital?
General Hospital.
Yeah, and then All My Children.
Oh yeah.
What other ones?
You were talking about Bold and the Beautiful.
Well, yeah. See, I was thinking that for our podcast that we hadn't really pondered beauty in a long time, and I thought, you know what, that would be really good, especially when we come off the heavy stuff, and just talk to our listeners about, what are their eyes seeing? What are they bringing in? What items of beauty? And then I was like, well, we could go soap opera on this shit, And then, like, if we have the beautiful, when's the last time you were able to be bold? Or how are you planning to be bold? And bold isn't being bitchy, and it's not being a dick. I'm sorry for our listeners who are like, why does Steve have to be so vulgar? But I wasn't going to pick on the ladies and not pick on the guys. I was,
He's trying to be an equal opportunity offender. Yeah, but before we get into the Bold and the Beautiful, going back to soap operas, I remember, I mean, like as a kid, my grandma, she was in living in New York, upstate New York.
Okay.
So she would, when she came, and I think at that point in time we were living in Utah, and every time she would come, she would stay for like a month, and then
Oh,
and
wow.
that's pretty much what she would do every year. She'd come, stay for a month, then go back home. But every day, like that, my grandma was tied. Like she's like, "Hey, we're gonna watch General Hospital. We're gonna watch Days of Our Lives." And those are the two I remember. Like she was very kind of like, when it's on, like, because there's no TiVo, there's no DVR, there's no,
Right. Yeah.
you can't go and stream it. I mean, that was the days when it was on and it was on. Like, and you weren't going to be able to catch reruns.
Right.
So like you couldn't miss it. I mean, like, it's on the TV. Hey, everybody, this is what we're doing now for, an hour. Or if you're watching them, Days of Our Lives and then General Hospital or whichever, I don't know, maybe one came on before the other, whatever. But it was always like, we're going to catch this now. And I never really asked the question, like, why? Like, why? I mean, like, what's so intriguing about these? I mean, because I would sit there and watch because I was a kid and I'm like, hey, the TV's on and why not catch it? And then you kind of get, like, you see some of the drama, the things that are happening there. But I'm like, what draws people to be kind of absorbed in those realms of soap operas? I mean, because some of them got really like, I mean, some of it was kind of wacky too.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
people coming back from the dead,
Oh, yeah. Just
all
because
kinds of
somebody
stuff.
died didn't mean that they were going to be dead forever.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Wikipedia comes up with the definition of a soap opera
Yeah.
is a radio or television serial dealing especially with domestic situations and frequently characterized by melodrama, ensemble casts, and sentimentality. The term soap opera originated from the radio dramas originally being supported by soap manufacturers.
Huh.
So it's not even though there is, and we would say like a soap opera is like a genre of television.
Right.
That's why I'm saying like there's a ton of soap operas out there. They just don't go by soap operas.
Right.
Soap operas were also the gateway into acting on screen.
Yeah.
A lot of people started out there. It started in soap operas and then launched. We would look at family series in the evening. There's another part where that could be considered a soap opera. Think about Family Ties. I mean, all of the evening shows from the mid '70s through the '90s. In the last 10 or 15 years, again, because our technology's changed, how we watch TV's totally changed.
Right.
But then that's where Bingeable and Netflix created. They want you to sit down and they want you to stay tuned in, which I do. I'm almost through my second viewing of Breaking Bad. Have you seen El Dorado?
I have.
Me too. And there's actually a documentary that I'm going to watch on that as well. On
I
the
saw
making,
it on there. I haven't watched that.
yeah,
one,
the
though.
making of El Dorado.
Mhm.
I didn't even realize, and maybe it was we were talking about it way back in the memories that I have forgotten.
Right.
And when I came across it, I'm like, maybe that's why, like in my mind, I was like, oh, I need to, watch the whole thing. Better Call Saul. I really wish that they would kick it in with season 5. I'm ready for season 5 to come along.
And they're filming, but I don't know about a release date.
Yeah. So anyway, soap operas. Then I remember, and just to be clear too, I remember having soap operas around, but then I remember too where like it was like amusement. Like the Puritans were anti-amusement. A meaning non, muse meaning think. And so soap operas kind of took a turn in the fundamental circles as, these aren't things that you should be bringing into your mind,
Right.
because it was salacious and, people were, just, so anyway, soap opera.
Soap opera. Yeah, I was just looking at some of the actors who got their start on soap operas, like Demi Moore. She was on General Hospital. John Stamos was on. I didn't see his.
The Guiding Light.
The Guiding Light
was one.
Lindsay Lohan was on Another World. Brad Pitt was on Another World. Guiding Light, which we didn't mention either. The Guiding Light, or As the World Turns, or is that Another World? I don't know. One of those. Sarah Michelle Gellar, who was Buffy the Vampire Slayer. She got started on All My Children.
Yeah.
Ryan Phillippe, which was One Life to Live. Kelly Ripa, which has the talk show now. She was on All My Children for a while.
Quite a bit.
12 years. So.
Yeah.
Marissa Tomei. Yeah, there's a ton of, but going back to them, what you were saying, I mean, lots of people got their start.
Yeah.
On those kind of shows. I mean, even though they're not the most, not most watched. I mean, maybe at some point in time they had really high ratings, but I know that's the reason why some of them died out, because daytime TV was for people who were watching during the daytime. We had a lot of people shifting into the workforce, which meant less people at home watching or, kind of being in that place. So,
yeah, and Michael Nader, from soap opera star of Dynasty and All My Children, dies at 76 from cancer 1 day ago, like yesterday.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Michael Nader, for those of you who knew him on the soaps that you watched. It was just one of those things where, if you don't talk about soap operas, it's kind of like a rotary phone. Using a rotary phone on a party line. I mean, like our kids and our kids' kids, that they're not going to know anything about that.
Those are just foreign concepts.
Foreign concepts. I mean, what's this world coming to when people don't know about a party line or a rotary phone?
Yeah, or even just a wired phone.
Exactly.
Like something that was hanging on your wall.
Yeah. And hey, if we're going to be calling out companies, can we just call out the internet providers and just say, you know what? Stop trying to bundle that shit.
Right.
We don't want a phone. Bundle it with something that we're interested in. How about like streaming services? Yeah. If you want to bundle, sign up with Disney Plus and give me a bundle of that, right. I mean, or whatever. But I mean, yeah.
You really want to still sell me your landline?
And I feel bad for the people that are working for you, right. Because every time when I call in, they're like, "Oh, I noticed that you don't bundle." I'm like, "Yeah," and I'm a 54-year-old dude, and so do you think that I'm going to change my mind right now? Right. I'd like to think I'm more open-minded than that, but I'm going to be closed-minded to you. And so you're like, "Hey, and would you like to bundle that? You can get this service and this service and this service, and you can save." I'm like, "No, I'm not saving. Mm-mm. You are getting more money when I bundle."
Right. All I need is internet.
That's what I need right now.
Give me my internet so that I can stream.
I want my MTV.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's O to the yeah. Yeah, so soap operas.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if we're gonna help out the generations that are coming behind us, got to keep them informed.
Got to keep them informed. Got to know.
The bold and the beautiful.
The bold and the beautiful.
So what beautiful things have you taken in recently?
Well, I've spent a lot of time in the car.
Oh, wow.
Recently.
Yeah, because
last week I had 2 11-hour trips and then 2 8.5-hour trips.
Wow, so 16, 17, 22. Mm-hmm. That's 9. Don't carry the knot. So you put in almost a full work week just driving.
Oh yeah.
32 hours.
Oh yeah. So that was a long time.
No, 39 hours.
Mm.
Yeah.
But I think so. Going back to beauty.
Yeah.
So we went to Virginia, and so we were right outside D.C. We spent 2 days of that trip. We went into D.C., went to a couple of Smithsonians.
There's more than one?
Yeah, there's like a ton of them.
Really?
Yeah, there's like a whole list of Smithsonians, like
I thought,
American History Smithsonian.
holy cow.
yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Right.
There's more than, I thought there was the Smithsonian.
Oh no, it's the Smithsonians. There's like a whole bunch.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. So you got to go there.
Yeah, so we went and stopped. I mean, and the particular one talking about beauty was the Portrait Museum, which was a Smithsonian, and so they had. I mean, it was mostly portraits. So on the first floor there was like portraits of presidents. There was then portraits of artists and pretty much anybody you could well, not think of, because they didn't have everybody, but third floor they had a whole contemporary. So they had a Kurt Cobain, they had an LL Cool J, they had, I mean, like some of these pop people, Katy Perry.
Really?
Yeah, it's just portraits. But on the second floor they also just had art.
Huh.
And so there were scenes, there were all kinds of stuff. And I noticed, so when Tyson was there, he's like, yeah, I don't really so much like the portraits, but I do like the art. Because there's something about the art that draws your attention more than a portrait.
Huh.
And yeah, so there were some great pieces of art there. They had some sculpture work,
Okay.
not a ton, but mostly paintings.
Yeah.
But I think those, I mean, there was lots of beauty, in that.
Yeah.
So that was one place that stuck out. We were in Tennessee, and
Yep.
I've been going there for a little bit now, and took Heather up that the route in the Smokies over. I think it was this past Sunday afternoon.
Cool.
We just drove up there, just. And there is, and we've talked about mountains and water.
Yeah.
I had that conversation with Heather too, and
Yeah.
but just like it kind of incorporated both. I mean, there's a little river that kind of runs through, and
Yeah.
splits. Has a little valley down there, and but there's something about that with all the greenery.
Yeah.
So Saturday was there. I mean, and there was the reason why they call it the Smokies, because there's kind of that haze that
Yep.
smoke, clouds really, but
Yeah.
but if you're looking at it from afar, it looks like it's it's smoky.
Yeah.
But yeah, so to me there's a lot of beauty just in nature.
Yeah.
And the things, Heather's like, I want to see a bear. I'm like, well, I want to see a bear if we're in the car. Don't want to see a bear if I have to slam on my brakes going down the spiral of of the drive.
All of a sudden, you and Heather are on season 19 NCIS episode with a bear mauling.
Right.
Oh my gosh! So she's not seen a bear in natural habitat.
Not in a natural. I don't think. I don't know. I'd have to ask her if she'd seen it. But she wanted to see one then. Maybe, I don't know. It's a good question. I don't think naturally. I've seen him at the zoo.
Yeah.
But
Well, my grandparents had a cabin
mhm.
in northern Michigan, not the Upper Peninsula, but further up north, out of the Thumb, where the farm was at.
Right.
And my grandfather actually had a blue tick that was a bear dog. And my grandfather hunted black bear in northern Michigan.
Wow.
And we would go to now, it depends on where everybody's at on what they call these different terms. All right? It's not a junkyard. Like when you say, I'm going to the dump,
Yeah.
it's not a bathroom function. Okay?
Right.
And so there people depending on where you grew up, and like if you grew up in the city, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But there are these places, landfills would probably be like a good term. More of a citified person would be like, oh, landfill. You mean like where the garbage trucks come by, take our garbage? Yeah, except
and then dump it.
Yeah, in rural parts of America, like landowners take their land and like they create a dump, and so it's like a place where you take your garbage or like refuse and stuff like that before a lot of recycling occurred and things. But we go to the city dump, and we would watch the black bear come in to eat and forage through the garbage.
Huh.
Yeah. Now, I wouldn't say that that's a natural state.
Right.
Now, also understand,
but it was wild.
Yeah, they were definitely wild, and yeah, my grandpa, he was a big hunter of the white-tailed deer, and then yeah, later on in life, then hunted bear. And I think it had to do with, it was an ecology, because like bear tags were based on keeping the population at bay so that bears weren't coming into. Now, and people could argue the fact of that it's their natural habitat, and if they take over, they take over. But there's where humanity affects ecology,
Right.
is because, yeah, but the bears wouldn't have all the food that they had, and the amount of cubs that a bear would have is based on how much food it had, like, and so
Right.
if the resources aren't there, then instead of having twins, then they would only have one bear cub, and so populations could get out of control based on that. And so then there's where humanity's brought back into taking care of the population to be able, because of our own influence. And it's
Right.
every one of our actions, it's affecting what's going on. So anyway, I never went on a hunt for bear with my grandfather, so I don't have that experience. But seeing black bear in the quote unquote wild, but we did stay in the car. It wasn't like, hey, let's go like forage at the dump with the bear.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's go see if he wants to play.
Quabba, quabba, quabba. Oh my word. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So nature,
Beauty,
and art. Those are things where you've been able to take that in.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I often think about, since we're on the west coast of Lake Michigan, the only time that I'd really be able to see the sun over the lake is when it comes up.
Yeah.
The really cool thing about being on the east coast of Lake Michigan is you get to see the sun set. And so, but gosh, I mean, there was just even an eerie glow last night as the storm was kind of rolling in and the sun was setting. 7:30, 8 o'clock-ish and whatever, and it was like, it's like the whole world got golden, and it was just super, super beautiful.
And then the lightning started too. So.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know, I think I'm with you there. There are great moments of beauty to take in. And really, as we're talking to the listener, of take time. Like if you want to, there's so much that seems to be pressure about what's wrong. I mean, like on this current date, the head of the news lines is the attack. Probably it's not confirmed yet, from ISIS-K militant group, attacked the air base in Afghanistan, while our current government is trying to get out U.S. citizens and then other people who have helped us during the longest war the U.S. has ever been involved in.
Yep.
And so, man, that's heavy stuff.
Right.
We haven't lost a soldier in Afghanistan since February of 2020 because of the peace agreements that were signed for the preparatory work of the U.S. getting out of Afghanistan. And four soldiers died and those are the first deaths, in, I mean, a couple years.
Right.
And so like there's heaviness there. There's this continual weight of COVID that's hanging over humanity right now. With how long is this going to go? Like one of the funniest, and I'm being a smartass right now, just prepping everybody.
Right.
Okay, one of the funniest things I ever heard is when somebody came across in the news and they're like, "Hey, COVID's not going anywhere." I'm like, "No shit, dumbass." When's the last time you saw a news report coming out of anyone from the hospitals saying, "Oh, by the way, this one virus that we knew that was like going to harm humanity, it just disappeared."
Right.
Not, and so like when you start thinking of that, and then it's weighing on people, and it's not just weighing on, I mean, literally a lot of conversations that I've had in the last couple of weeks are people reaching out, and they're in a heavy spot.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, I would say go to Amazon and pull up like look for a plain paper journal or a line journal, or maybe you've got a journal that you were going to journal but you're not using it, and start a practice of writing down something that you see or where you find beauty, and that's going to lift your spirits. It's going to lift your spirits.
Yeah, because you're talking, I mean, with that, then you're saying the heaviness of the world around us can distract us from beauty, right?
Yes, that is what thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I was just trying. I think that's what you were,
That-
where you
that-
were going, because there's so many things like
There-
you were mentioning
there
that
are
are
s-
happening in the world that'll just take our eyes and just say, "Focus on me, focus on me."
Yeah,
And you're like, "No, I don't want to focus on you. I mean, I can know the dangers and the things that are happening without being able to say it's going to consume me.
right.
I don't want it to consume me."
Yeah,
And I can control the things that are going to consume me without being able to say it doesn't exist. Like I'm going to say COVID doesn't exist. Well, that's dumb. I mean, over 600,000 people have died of it.
right.
How can I say it didn't exist?
Yeah,
I mean, that's yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So there is a lot around, and I would echo what you just mentioned with being able to write things down,
Yeah.
because it can be so easy to forget it.
Well, that's what I have found with my journals and the work that I do with written paper, or with regular paper and pen, is that I can go back through and I can review it.
Yeah.
And it just is one of those things where those are nice surprises, and whether it's I mean, and Amy and I just laugh because I got to pull up off the top of my head right now. I can't. Yes, Moleskin Classic Notebook. It's 5 by 8.25. But like, yeah, I've got so many Moleskin journals, and
How many moles were killed for the
zero,
Okay.
zero. And actually, I think there's a lot of recycling of paper happening there.
Good.
But you can get them in all different colors. They're really pretty, and yeah, that's a soft cover. I really like the hardcover Moleskin products as well, and and then I'm a blank page guy. I really like blank pages and be able to do that. But whether
No
it's
lines, right?
no lines. But by writing something down, then you have it. So like whether I'm writing poetry, writing lyrics to a song, if I'm sketching and drawing, I mean just like that's just one of the things that I do, and I love it because I can go back, and when I go back, I can review it, and I think that we're really saying, hey, if you're struggling with some of the weight, take time to ponder the lighter things, the things that will, I mean, like even when you started talking, you were going through your mind and the pictures in your mind of where you had been. I heard a change in the tone of your voice.
Yeah.
Because, you know, that's our mind. It's releasing chemicals, the, you know, endorphins of, you know, the pleasure of what was, you know, around that experience.
Right.
And yeah, I find a lot of beauty in nature, and probably the most I'm taking it all in. Like I saw a fox on Monday morning when I was driving to the studio. I thought, wow, that's cool. I saw two twin, well, twins would be two,
Right. It's true.
but fawn, and they still had their spots. It's getting later in the year for like fawns to be having their spots, you know, and stuff like that. But they were, yeah, they're again, you know, driving in. Skokie Lagoons is right there on my drive to get to the highway, and you know, there's that. We do, because our proximity, we get down to the lake, and just to be able to hear the waves and just kind of coming and beating against the beach, and don't always go out to the beach as much as even just a quick drive down, just to be able to be near the water. And but all these things come back to something that I said earlier. I really enjoy being surrounded by something larger than me. Something that's beyond.
Right.
Something outside of myself, you know.
And I think especially Lake Michigan is a good reminder of that, because even though geographically on a map we can see that it has boundaries and borders, but when you're looking out from the banks of wherever you're at in Michigan, you can't see the other side.
Well, and then when you get to know more about that body of water, I mean, you're talking about 780 feet deep.
Right.
I mean, this thing is like 70 stories deep.
Right.
So in the Chicago scape, when you see how tall the big buildings are, you start thinking about how deep. And actually, it's considered a freshwater ocean.
Yeah.
Because of how big the Great Lakes are. And so, yeah, I mean, and then you go swimming in it. Not only does it cold enough to wake you up, but I mean, then you man, we swam out to the buoys the other day, and on the way back, I was doing the back float just to be able to get myself buoyed up and not being, you know, pulled by current and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, I just sit back and I'm just in awe. I'm in awe too. Like I see great beauty in Chicago when I drive in on the different ethnicities of people. I mean, like it's so there are so many different people of color, and then like even in my mind, just thinking about homes of origin, and then my mind goes to, you know, whether if somebody was a refugee, how much their heart they must long for to be able to go back home.
Right.
You know? But yeah, I saw a guy the other day and I'm like, oh, he has to be South American. Like, he looked very similar to like Aztecian descendant, you know?
Yeah.
And I could totally be wrong, you know? I mean, it could be, you know, I have a really hard time discerning like all of the Asian cultural differences,
Right.
As far as looks and stuff like that. But man, gosh, there's a lot of just great diversity. Like, and I find beauty in that.
Yeah.
And it's probably, I don't know, it like that probably doesn't surprise anybody who's listening to the podcast, because they're like, you guys are whack jobs anyway.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
It's okay. We embrace that.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I mean, beauty and humanity. Even though humanity can be filled with so much ugliness and
I think we focus on that because
Right.
there's difficult things that need to be talked about.
yeah,
But when we focus on it and talk about it, we lose track of
yeah,
what can be found within humanity.
Mhm.
Yeah.
right. Yeah, and I agree with you on the level of it. I mean, I'm reminded of the things that are happening in Afghanistan,
Yeah.
and when we have a lot of Afghan refugees that are coming through,
Mm-hmm.
and thinking about from their perspective, some of them still have family that haven't been able to get out.
Right.
Some of them have families that, like extended families that are still there, and what a difficult position that puts them in.
Yeah.
Like they helped the United States, which put them in a position where they were going to be a target,
Right.
which is the reason why they're here and not there anymore.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that they didn't like Afghanistan. It doesn't mean that they didn't like their home country. It just meant that they were believing that this was going to be something that was going to be helpful.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a tough thing to be able to see that. And that's the heaviness side, but yet seeing that even as they're here, like being able to have a community of diversity says, hey, guess what? Like you're also welcome to bring your culture into this because we're a diverse people.
Yeah.
And we're not trying to say, at least we're not trying to say, you have to be like us, like our culture.
No,
We
no.
want
I
to
mean,
incorporate and
some people would say we're anti-patriotic in regards to that, but I wouldn't confess that. I love living in the United States,
me too.
and I love the freedoms that are enjoyed here.
Okay.
And I love. I mean, this is condemning, but it's still true. I love the privileged life that I live. But there's beauty in the diversity
Mm-hmm.
of people that I don't know. Like when I drive home today, I'll go past a school and take a left. And 8 times, 7 times out of 10, when I get to the next block, I will stop at a stop sign. It's a 4-way stop, and usually coming out of that apartment building are people um, where women wear a head covering and children are in Middle Eastern attire.
Right.
And then I'll get to that next stoplight and take a left, and within a block and a half, I'll look to my left, just across the street from, I think it's a university, but there's a Jewish,
Like a
like a school.
Jewish school. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it depends on the time of day, but usually there's 15 to 30 boys like on the stairwell. Somebody's throwing a baseball and back and forth, and it depends on the day and the time of day. Or there could be men who are walking down the street with black coats and a black hat and ringlets, and I'm like, there's my Jewish brothers,
Mm-hmm.
and then in about less than a mile, I take a look to the right, and there's a park, and people have their coverings, like little tent coverings and stuff like that. And I mean, there could be 25 people in a big old, I mean, like stacks of charcoal, and they're doing a family get together that embraces like 30 people in their, whether it was
Right.
their house or whether it was their neighborhood, and they went to the park to enjoy the park. While,
Mm-hmm.
all of the cars parked in the place where they shouldn't be parked, and there's kids playing baseball, and there's one team smiling and the other team's crying. I mean, all of this stuff, and I just take it in, and I'm like, gosh, how cool is it? That people are getting in, just to enjoy life like that, and that I'm just surrounded by such amazing diversity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is fun, and that is a beauty that you don't want to miss out either.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, I'm not like, yeah, I don't want to go through life and where when I see people, I'm just like, you know, road rage can bring that out on you. But, you know,
It's true.
it's just, yeah, you know, take in, gosh, be grateful and thankful. And, you know, I'm starting to get to know my neighbors and, you know, just to see people and in our building, and, you know, we're surrounded with people who are aging. And so it gives me pause, you know, to ponder the aging process and, you know, what does the next 15 years of my life look like, or the next 25 or 30 years of my life, knock on wood.
I think that's a plastic table.
Yeah, yeah, right. All right,
It was
yeah.
symbolic.
Symbolically, which is actually, you know what knocking on wood represents?
No.
If I believe this to be correct, is knocking on wood was to scare the tree gnomes so that they wouldn't have a evil or bad
Intention
intent.
Yeah. Okay.
The little
tree gnomes.
Yeah, the or the tree leprechauns. Yeah, so beauty. What about bold, Phil? What like, are there things in your life that you're like, hey, you know what? I've been being bold about this, or and why I put it out there is, if you don't think about it, you're not. It's not going to happen or whatever. But you know, is there something that, or is there like an area in your life or something that you're like, man, I wish I could be more bold about this, or I'm using that word bold as far as like a concerted effort of leaning into in motion to be, you know, I don't know, like it's beauty is something we're taking in.
Right.
And we're also seeing that beauty is transformative, and it changes our outlook, it changes our perspective, it can change our behavior, our attitude. You know, bold is like this motion of, you know, for me, like Star Trek, you know, is like, you know, let's go discover something undiscovered, you know, kind of thing. Bold.
Yeah, so I think of bold, and kind of understanding what it is. I mean, you look at bold text, right? So you're looking at your designs, you're writing out a paper, you're putting something on paper, and what you see in bold stands out. And so when I think about boldness, I mean, I go back to like conversations that I've had recently. I mean, and this was, you know, working with some people in Tennessee, and I'm like, you know, here's, you know, like they're talking about one thing, and I said, but have you considered this? And trying, because then when you're then speaking, and yeah, it is sometimes contrary to what they're saying, that's some boldness. I mean, and sometimes you have to have bold conversations in order to move the conversation.
Yeah.
Because if everyone's gonna, okay, let's all agree, but somebody's thinking like that's not really what I'm thinking. It's not really what I want to say. It's, I don't want to stand out. I don't want to be bold. And so sometimes somebody has to be in the mix. And that's a really good thing as a consultant. Like, I have the opportunity to be able to say something that's going to stand out. It's going to lead people to say, oh, well, that's not what we were going to do, or that's not what we were going to.
Huh.
And so boldness says, I want to make this a part of the conversation because it needs to be talked about.
Yeah.
It needs to be said. So I want to highlight this. I want it to stand out. So when I'm looking at, you know, a conversation relationship, boldness needs to happen individually on a relationship level too, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, Heather and I, since we had, you know, 16 hours of driving,
Yeah.
just the two of us, like there were some conversations that we probably needed to have, and we had them. I mean, and they weren't always comfortable. They weren't always ones I'm like, oh, well, let's have this more.
Yeah.
Like, but there's things that sometimes, you know, on a daily basis, you know, things can kind of just go under the radar. Or if you're saying, yeah, I don't really want to have a conflict right now, or I don't really want to jump into things that are going to be awkward or things that might be painful, like, all right, let's talk about this. And I mean, so I think that some of that came out as well. Now, where, I mean, it's always a good question to ask, where can I be more bold, or that I want to be more bold? And I'd have to think about that one for a little bit, but I think some of those things stood up to me recently, as far
Yeah.
as something that's standing out, something where you're saying, I know I might be standing alone in this, but I'm still going to speak it. And we've talked about bold things on the podcast before, so it's not new for us to be able to speak out. I mean, we've talked about the Western Church. We've talked about,
Yeah.
injustice. We've talked about racism. We've talked about all kinds of stuff that we wouldn't necessarily say, "Ooh, that's bold," but there's a lot of people who would say that they're like, maybe even people who stopped listening to us because we were speaking something that wasn't the norm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was bold.
Well, and I think, not to belabor, like, what I want listeners to know is, hey, we appreciate every person who is listening.
Mm-hmm.
We would love for our audience to be broader and larger.
Right.
But even though we would love for that, what I also know is the message that we bring isn't a popular one.
Right.
People aren't lining up to listen to the stuff that we're saying. But to my son's encouragement, he's like, Dad, you got to keep on going.
Mm-hmm.
Get this stuff down. This is stuff that needs to be recorded. This is stuff that people do need to hear. And you know what? Maybe this podcast isn't even like popularized before our death. But with it out there, it may be after our deaths that it becomes informative. And that a people group grab onto it.
Yeah.
And that people find a timeless wisdom that's being shared. Or, governmental changes could happen and it could be shut off and taken down because the free thoughtness of it is just too much and is more dangerous than it is helpful in the current environment. Who knows what the future has to hold, right?
Right.
I love how your head works. Like that bold print. I hadn't even gone there, and I'm like, wow, that is really cool. And what a great way for our listeners to say what is standing out in our lives. What things can we be grateful that we're able to be bold. For some people, waking up and making it through the day is a bold move.
Mm-hmm.
And we just want to acknowledge that.
Right.
I'm coming off of, actually just rounded the corner on my 1-year anniversary in Chicagoland.
Right.
And that was quite the move. And now, for as many good things as have been in that, there's also been things that have been difficult. And so, like, where I'm being bold right now is I'm working on losing my COVID-30. And I'm actually this week, you and I were texting about it last night and stuff like that. The studio's fully functional now. Right. And so I'm actually looking at Earthen Warehouse as a full-time job right now. Mm-hmm. And so I'm putting in my 40 hours. And it's just one of those things. I think my wife is like scratching her head going, what's going on with this dude? All of a sudden now he's up at 5 o'clock in the morning and he's heading into, well, yeah, I am. Because if I'm going to be home for dinner, making dinner, then I got to get in there sometime. Yep. And so, I mean, I think that these are, for me personally, these are good changes. They're not necessarily easy changes, but they're good and healthy changes for me. Right. Instead of a non-committed spiral of navigating this galaxy, kind of thing.
Which you would then say it's bold because it's going to stand out.
Yeah.
It's a change, it's a shift. That means it
Yeah.
can be bold.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where
like 5 a.m. shouldn't exist for anybody, but there's a lot of people who apparently like to get up at that time.
I've been anti any numbers on the clock past 2 a.m. and before 10 a.m. Like, I'm really not for them. I mean, those are 8 hours that I'm like, but I mean, there's been like even a shift in you can't get up at 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning and stay up till 2.
Right.
Can't
do it.
Yeah, and so I've just been using, like, if I lay my head down on my pillow and head to sleep, then what I do is I just take time to meditate and be like, you know what, you're going to be better for this by doing it this way. So let my mind, do some interaction with the unseen deity and, just fall into a rest. And when the alarm goes off, I'm well rested, and then I am up and on my way. And actually, I mean, like, I enjoy the work of the studio. And so, yeah, it's work. It is work, but I enjoy that, and I'm getting to do that. And I think that probably the other thing is that, and actually Richard Rohr is doing a thing on art and creatives and stuff like that in his devotionals right now.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, he's like, hey, you know what artists need to remember is that their work brings glory to the unseen. And so I think there's where the bold and the beautiful then intersect for me, is because then I get to, really live out. And as I loaded up the kiln yesterday, I had a special project in there. And I'm like, God, dear ATM Jesus. I'm like, I am here to make a withdrawal. The withdrawal is, could you please keep this pottery sculpture safe? Because if the fires of this kiln, and I'm like, so with the wild fires of hell raising up around this pot, because there's a lot that can go wrong in a kiln. And so, if it's not dried correctly and there's moisture, it can pop and crack. And then then there's other parts that it hasn't been compressed in a right way. Bottoms can have cracks come through, this piece is a rather large piece that's 3 pieces joined together, that all 3 pieces were made on different days. And so, like, the clay wasn't even like, it wasn't really made to be talking to itself, to bond and to join, and stuff. And so I did all the tricks in the trade, and stuff like that. And this morning I came back in and unloaded the kiln, and everything came through, and I was like, oh, thank you, ATM Jesus. Thank you.
The withdrawal?
Yeah. I'm like, I'm really asking for a favor here. I need, and God's like, hey, dude, you've been talking to me about other stuff, real stuff. You can come to me with what your need is too. So I'm like, right on, cool, thanks.
It's bold and beautiful.
Yeah, so much. So, but yeah, I mean, really, for me, it's a informed personal responsibility rising up into, like, placing a responsibility on myself to have to meet. And so, which hasn't been my habit for over a year. And so that's where the work gets hard. And it's not about whether this week works. It's about, am I doing this 4 weeks from now? There's the sticker. And I just, my bold move is that I want to continue to be motivated to make that change.
That's good.
Change isn't easy.
No, never is.
Yeah. I mean, really, in true transparency, I'd rather live in the bottom of a bottle of scotch.
Mm.
But I'm not doing that.
Picturing living in.
I dream of Jeannie. Talk about.
Yeah.
But I mean, really, I mean, and I think that's the call out to the listener is, hey, what has been a part of your life that's robbing you from the opportunity of a bold move? And it could be fear, it could be risk, it could be just what is it? Get bold, and let's have some report backs, like 4 months or 6 months from now. And I think the podcast to me is something that when we committed to it, it took a while for the muscle and the exercise of it to kick in.
Right.
Now when it doesn't happen, I miss it. That wasn't the case, in season one.
Early on, yeah.
Oh, yeah, because, I mean, we were technology-wise, now, like we walk in, we set up 2 things, and boom, 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 boom. I mean, like, there's so much that has been overcome as far as hurdles and, what it would take. And
right.
And now it's just a part of what's going on. And I felt bad doing a rerun,
Right.
But I also had to give myself permission that was really okay. It's okay. I mean, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So you guys out there, bold and beautiful things. So I think Steve brought it out and said, so where do you need to be more bold? What's keeping you from the bold and the beautiful? What are the barriers? How can you remove them? We talked about journaling. We talked about, all of those ways in which we just need to see it, identify it, write it down sometimes, and being able to spend time in that.
Yeah, anytime you can get the rattle of what's going on inside your head out.
Right.
Healthy. Very healthy. Yep. And then if you can do it with another human being,
right,
that's healthy too.
It's very healthy.
Yeah. And so, and hopefully if you are in a bad spot and you don't feel like there's somebody around you that you can get to healthy with, man, don't hesitate to contact a local professional.
Right. That's what they're there for. They're professionals.
Yep. All right. Well, anything else?
No, I think it's a good place to wrap up. And
I think so too.
Yeah. I feel like of course, we always want to leave people with something that they can do as well. Like, this is what we can focus on.
Yeah. Hey, and I haven't run this by you, but since we're spur of the moment thinking about stuff, how do you feel about when we started our first season? We didn't really know how we were going to. We've kind of come up with our own shorthand. We do S1, S2, S3, season 1, 2, and 3, and then E for the episode 1 through 10. I'm thinking about going back into our YouTube channel and labeling them all that way. We were messing around a little bit with trying to get subscribers and, that it would be out there. But I think from the library effect, I think that it would be wise. So then that way people can go to it. And so I think by doing that, it's the best way to catalog it in a library sense. And then in the descriptor, we have the title and doing that. But I think instead of worried about dates, I'm not going to worry about the dates. I'm going to just, be able to put it with that. Then that way you can have an easy index to say, oh yeah, season 2, episode 3, that was fantastic, or, and stuff like that. But I wanted to put that out there that I think that we're going to be moving to that so that people will be able to figure that out. The other thing is we do have playlists. And so depending on what the topic is, in YouTube, you can go into the playlist and you can be able to find out whether it's mental health or just usually wellness and different things like that. So interviews, if you're like, man, I really love the interviews, and I'm like, well, get our interview watch count up, you know, and go and listen to some of these interviews.
That's right. Because, yeah, I mean, it's the reason why we've stuck a little bit more with just you and me.
It is.
Because
people aren't listening to the interviews.
Right.
And we seem to never be for a lack of something to kick around.
Right.
Yeah.
We always can talk.
Ad nauseum. Most people are like, who in the world listens for an hour and 45 minutes? Well, you're going to get a full 2 hours because you can tell we haven't been together for 2 weeks.
I know.
Yeah.
That's the real reason.
And the other thing is my biorhythm, like as far as like, I love taping in the afternoon. What I'm finding out though, you're not going to have a problem with me in the mornings anymore. That 10 o'clock to noon or whatever, that's a sweet spot for me. I'm eating lunch by that time.
Wow, it's even early lunch, yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I guess.
But if you're up at 5,
right?
I mean, like up at 5 and 2 cups of coffee, and people are like, he seems to be a little jittery. Well, I've had 3 cups today, and one of them was a cold brew. Yeah. Well, hey everybody, thank you so much for listening again, and you know, it'd really be cool if you could just invite one person to listen to your favorite episode, and if we could grow our audience. But hey, if it's us 35 and no more, not a problem.
Yeah. So now is the time to be bold, to be beautiful, and to find the beauty around you.
I'm waiting for the bird.
He's looking at you. He's looking.
Edgar says farewell. All right. Peace out, everybody.